Good afternoon, folks. Al Mattingly, Daviess County Judge Executive. It's close to 1 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, February the 2nd. We're just hanging around to see if the weather forecasters are going to be right this time. Hope they're not. But just in case they are, I wanted to kind of go through what the county is going to be doing from the standpoint of being prepared for the ice storm. What I've seen lately is we could get up to 3/4 of an inch of ice. With some snow and sleet. I'd rather have the snow and sleet and no ice, because the engineer, when I bring him up here, will tell you that you can't push ice and you really can't pre-treat because of the rain. So anyway, lots of times when you have a major winter storm come through, you will see the local elected officials declare a state of emergency. And I just want to reiterate once more about what a state of emergency is. A state of emergency, many times I get calls, you didn't issue one and I had to go to work. If you'd issued one, I could have stayed home and still gotten paid. That is not true. A state of emergency just means that the county, by declaring a state of emergency, or the city, can go around, work around the normal rules for purchasing equipment, renting equipment, issuing contracts, spending money. And I really don't like that. I don't want to do that any more than is absolutely necessary. I think we should all be open and transparent with your tax dollars. And that's why we very seldom declare a state of emergency. A state of emergency doesn't mean that you can't get out on the highway. But when a state of emergency is declared, you should take that to heart in knowing that we don't do it lightly, and that perhaps if you can avoid travel, perhaps if you can stay off of the highway. Perhaps if you're in the city and on a snow route, you park your vehicle off of the street so that the snow plows can get down through there. So a state of emergency doesn't have a thing to do with whether or not you show up to your workplace the next day. That's between you and your employer, and I would suggest that you be in close contact with your employer and find out whether or not he's expecting you to come in. Most people will shut down. Some people who provide emergency services like plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, automotive repair, grocery stores often are open. So I would suggest, if you're watching this program, that if you haven't already, and I think most people have, judging by the lack of things on the shelves at the grocery, get out and get the things that you think that you're going to need. If we declare a state of emergency, you can come back to this Facebook page and you will see it. We will also notify the media, and they will put it on their Facebook page or on TV and get that notice to you. First person I want to bring up is Mark Brasher. Mark is our county engineer. Mark and I had a meeting this morning talking about what are you doing to prepare for this winter event. And as I said earlier, there's not a lot we can do, but Mark, come up and talk to them and tell them what we are doing.
Sure, Judge. Thank you. With an event like this, we had a significant amount of precipitation before what we expect to be a large amount of ice. So pre-treating, as far as using brine material, will get diluted, wash away. So that's not a good way for an event like this to go about. So what we've done, looking at the forecast, we're looking at a significant amount of ice and then potentially snow. So we've topped off our fuel, we've got our chainsaws ready, we've got our employees set to come in. As of midnight tonight, we'll be on 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. So we'll have somebody present and on call at our operations center. We expect the vast majority of the work we'll be doing is going to be tree removal if that amount of ice does come to fruition. So that is how we are set up. That's how we're moving forward unless the forecast changes. If there's anything I can tell the public at this point would be, if you do not have to be on the road, please do not. We may have to go out and clear the roads from trees and utility poles, working with the utility companies. It makes it very difficult if we have a substantial amount of traffic. Ice is a terrible thing. Our trucks are no different than your vehicles, other than they weigh 20 or 30 ton more. So traction is hard to come by. So anybody that can stay off the road, if it's not an emergency, please do. Like I said, we'll be at the Operations Center. We'll have men available. If there is any issues that we need to address, obviously, if it's an emergency, you can call 911 dispatch. We should have somebody in the Operations Center, so you can call 270-685-8456 to report any problems that need to be addressed, and we will do our best to get there. But just keep in mind, we have the same trouble as anyone else does as far as driving on the roads.
Mark, thanks. One of the things I want to reiterate, there may be power lines down and power poles down. Please don't think you're doing anybody a favor by going out there trying to move these things yourself or pulling wires off. If you happen to have a wire fall over your car, stay in the car. Stay in the car, call 911, and we'll have somebody from the fire department out there to help you, or some emergency personnel out there to help you. I know I talked to a fellow this morning, actually it was my son, and he wanted to borrow some shears so he could cut some limbs that are hanging over his power lines. Please don't do that. You're not electricians, you're not equipped for it, and you end up getting electrocuted. What we want is for everybody to ride the storm out in the safest possible manner. Now, we've talked about the roads. Let's talk about what if you guys, somebody would have a medical emergency or some other issue in the house. You're smelling gas, you're smelling carbon, or you think you smell carbon monoxide. I have Keith Herm with the Daviess County Fire Department here. Keith, you want to come up and talk to them about the common sense things that they should be doing?
Thank you, Judge. Keith Herm, Daviess County Fire Department. On behalf of Chief Smith and the rest of the personnel of Daviess County Fire Department, we are ready, albeit we're going to be at a slower response. Just like Engineer Brasher said, our vehicles only run what we can make them do on this ice, and if we have what's projected, we will be there, but maybe a little slower. I'll say this, if you're experiencing something, you failed a few days ago, you're not feeling well, and you can get to the doctor today, let's go ahead and do that today. The weather is still good. You feel like you need to go to the hospital and be checked out, go ahead and make that call today, and let's go on and take care of any medical problems we can before this hits. Once this hits, response is going to be slower. You realize that. Talking about home safety, if we're using generators, if the power goes out, be sure and place that generator away from the house, at least 20 feet. Let's never put generators in the basement or near a window or in an attached garage. It's just not a good idea. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, make sure they're battery backup. A lot of those nowadays are hardwired. If power goes out, they're not going to have electricity, so make sure they're battery backup and operating. Again, if you have any kind of problem, don't hesitate to reach out to us. 911 is how you get us. We will be there just as quickly as we can be there. Conditions arise, that slow down that response, so be mindful of that. Anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and thank you for this opportunity, Judge. Be safe.
Keith, one of the things I want to talk about too, as far as generators, many people have portable generators. They'll wire them into their electrical system, and they don't have an automatic transfer switch, which isolates the power feed coming into the house, meaning that your generator now is making that power line that some lineman is working on trying to restore power hot, and it can cause them real danger. So if you don't have an automatic transfer switch, be sure that you go to your main breaker panel and turn the main breaker off. That way you don't end up having power restored, your generator creating power, and boom, you have an explosion, you have a fire. The next person I'm going to bring up is Andy Ball. He's head of our emergency management, and Andy is the guy that only has to get it right 1 out of 5 times or 6 times. If you're a baseball player, you got to at least hit 1 out of 3. But Andy can get it right 1 out of 10 times, just like the weather forecasters, and still retain his job. Andy, come up and tell us what you're going to do.
Thank you, Judge. And I was a baseball player, so I understand that concept. Yeah, probably not. Thanks for having me. And we've been monitoring this situation, obviously, for the last couple of days, just like the other counties in our area. We met this morning here in the Emergency Operations Center, all the local agencies, as we typically do for severe weather or other type of emergencies of this nature. We had a conference call with the National Weather Service out of Paducah this morning. Yesterday they had predicted slightly less ice, so we brought everybody in today with the new predictions. As the judge said, near 3/4 of an inch is what we're expecting, what we're being forecast right now. I hope that's worst case scenario. In comparison, for those that were around during the 2009 ice storm, most of this area received around an inch, maybe a little bit more of ice. So we're not expecting it to be quite that bad, but just like we do in my line of business, we prepare for the worst. So some of the things that we do and have been doing this morning already is reaching out to our churches who operate as emergency shelters, seeing who's available to open their doors. We would use our local VOAD, that's Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, to help man that. And then with the judge's approval, we would use constables for security just like we normally do for the white flag. Speaking of white flag, we will be white flag starting tomorrow night, Thursday night through at least Monday night. We're continue to operate out of Owensboro Christian Church off New Hartford Road, just like we have been. And if we need to set up another shelter, depending on the power outages and where they're located, we will either do it there at OCC, or we could potentially use Heritage Baptist or St. Joe and Paul, depending again on those power outages. I think talking to the National Weather Service this morning and our local agencies, the biggest difficulties that we're going to see potentially over the next 24, 48 hours are the travel impacts. People, being smart and staying off the road like everybody's been alluding to. If you don't have to be out there, do not get out there on the road. It doesn't matter if you've got a four-wheel drive or not. Four-wheel drives, as we can attest to, that have driven on ice with four-wheel drives, doesn't do a whole lot of good once you start skidding. So just stay off of the roads. And then, try to go ahead, use today, be prepared, get your home prepared. Just like Keith was talking about, only use those approved alternate heating sources. You get people get in trouble either with dirty chimneys or not venting for carbon monoxide poisoning, and it causes, they're already going to be busy. The first responders are going to be extremely busy dealing with wrecks, dealing with home fires, dealing with everything that comes with slips and falls. So please do them a favor and yourselves and just stay in your home. This shouldn't be a long-lived event like you saw in 2009. We'll get through this hopefully in a couple of days, and we'll return to somewhat normal. But that's really all I think I had, unless you've got
emergency supplies should people have at home, batteries,
Sure.
all that.
You definitely rural communities typically take care of their own. They usually have the stuff that they need. Your extra blankets, your extra approved heating source. A lot of them use chimneys, but a lot of the folks in the city, they're not quite as prepared sometimes. So some of those kit items would include a battery operated radio so that you know what's going on within the community. You don't have to get out, especially if communications go down. Keep those phones charged. Keep gas in your vehicles if you did have an emergency. Keep extra spare batteries for flashlights for that radio. Any medicines, now you should have already had went out and got any prescriptions, at least for 72 hours. You want to be covered for at least a minimum of 72 hours. A gallon of water per person per day. That also includes pets. A gallon, depending on the size of pet, obviously, but about a gallon of water per pet. And then non-perishable food items such as canned goods. And then, if you don't have to open, if you do have a power outage and you don't have to open a freezer or refrigerator, don't do it. You lose a vast amount of cool air out of your refrigerator or freezer every time you open that. So only open it when necessary. Even though it's going to be cold, you still don't want to lose any food, because again, this is supposed to be a short-lived event, 24, 48 hours, and hopefully we'll be good to go. Like I said, we've met with the local agencies. OMU and Kenergy were included in that meeting this morning. They are prepared. They've got crews coming in from outside of our communities ready to come in and assist if we do have large-scale power outages. So just do what you can from your home. Stay off the roads. Be prepared today. Don't wait until tomorrow, and we'll make it through this event. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Andy. And just take this with a grain of salt from a contractor who has been in this community for 50 years and seen lots of things. Alternative heating sources such as salamanders. I've seen people bring salamanders inside, fire them up, and try to heat the house. They are made for areas with large volumes of air so that they can discharge those fumes. People who have kerosene heaters, you can bring a kerosene heater in the house, and they are safe generally, particularly if they're new. But as they get older, they will start to produce carbon monoxide, and they won't burn properly. The other thing that happens is people will leave them on. They'll get up in the middle of the night to go to the potty, and they'll stumble over them. And when you turn kerosene over and have a flame with it, then you start a fire. People who have gas fireplaces, ventless fireplaces. I don't know about you. I have a ventless set of gas logs, but I still have cracked the damper in my chimney because I'm from old school. You don't burn gas unless you can vent it to the outside. If you don't have ventless logs, you need to make sure that flue damper is open. If you burn wood, you make sure that your fireplace is drawing. It's not rolling smoke back into the house, which if smoke's coming in the house, carbon monoxide is coming into the house. One of the greatest heat sources, if you have natural gas, is your water heater. Before you go to bed at night, fill your bathtub full of hot water. It will sit there and radiate water all night long, keep that bathroom nice and toasty. I don't think we're going to get temperatures that will cause pipes to freeze, but it will also help keep the pipes from freezing if the temperatures got down that low. Stovetops, gas ovens and stovetops. My mama used to open our oven every now and then in the wintertime. That's not recommended for a very long period because you do have some, unless you've got the vent at the top exhausting those fumes, they're going to stay in the house. And if you got the vent on, it's exhausting more hot air than you're actually generating by the oven. Let's look at this as an adventure. So many people will run around like Chicken Little, their heads cut off, and what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is just another winter adventure. We'll make the best we can. Let's stay home with our family and our friends and our loved ones and wait it out over the next 24 to 48 hours. Guarantee you Saturday we'll all be out wondering what we were doing staying at home. If you have any questions this afternoon, you can call emergency management. You can call 685-8424. That's a courthouse phone number, and we will get you to the right person. 685-46. 8456. 685-8456 is the operations center if you have issues. But if you don't know who to call and you have an emergency, call 911. That's what they're there for. That's what the city pays the salaries for. That's what we pay the salaries for. And they will get the proper person out to you. I would be remiss if I didn't talk in terms of your pets and your animals. For gosh sakes, don't tie them up on a leash outside without water and shelter. Either put them in a dog house, a cat house, or bring them inside. Because they suffer just like you. Just because they got a lot of fur and fuzz on their face like Andy does, doesn't mean that they're immune to the cold weather. Again, let's just treat this as an adventure. We'll get through it here over the next 24 to 48 hours. And we can thank the Lord that we are not going to get, I hope, Andy, of course, this may be the one time out of 10 that you are right, that we're not going to get what we are predicting, number one. And number two, just go back and look at the East Coast this past weekend, 18 to 30 inches of snow and 70-mile-an-hour winds. We would be ill prepared for that. So everybody be safe. And if you need any help, you've got some phone numbers to call, and we'll see you on the other side of the storm. Thanks.